At the gala, they laughed as if I didn't belong, a stain on my dress, a stain on my worth. But a year later, I walked back into that same ballroom, wealthy, powerful, untouchable. And when they saw me, silence fell. You wonder how it happened? Come along with me as I share my story. My name is Iris. Before I dive in, if you love true life stories filled with suspense, twists, and life lessons, make sure you subscribe. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The hum of the charity gala was a symphony of everything I was not. It was the clink of crystal flutes holding champagne that cost more than my weekly grocery run. It was the rustle of silk and taffeta, gowns that whispered of private fittings and exorbitant price tags. It was the low, confident murmur of old money and new influence, a language I'd never learned to speak. I stood by the wall, a wilting flower in a sea of cultivated roses, my simple black dress feeling more like a sackcloth with every passing second. My fingers were clenched around a clutch that was scuffed at the corners, a relic from a happier, simpler time. Just smile, Iris, Liam had said, squeezing my hand before he was swept away into the crowd by his colleagues. It's for a good cause. And it's just one night. Liam, my Liam, with his kind eyes and boundless optimism. He saw these events as networking opportunities, a chance to rub elbows with the partners at his architecture firm. He believed in meritocracy, in the power of a good idea. He didn't see the invisible walls, the gilded cages that separated people like us from people like them. Them. The Kingsleys. My eyes, against my will, found them. They held court at the center of the room, a perfect, glittering nucleus of entitlement. Arthur Kingsley, Liam's boss, with a laugh too loud and a pat on the back too hard. His wife, Cynthia, a woman whose face was a testament to the surgeon's art, cold and beautifully unyielding. And their daughter, Cassandra. Cassandra. My personal ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. We'd gone to high school together. Where I had thrift store jeans and packed lunches, she had designer labels and a credit card with no limit. Where I had quiet academic diligence, she had a flamboyant, careless charm that drew people in. She was the queen bee, and I was the worker, and she occasionally stepped on for amusement. A decade had passed, but the hierarchy remained intact. She was resplendent in a gown of ice blue, her blonde hair swept into an artfully messy chignon that had probably taken 2 hours to achieve. She was laughing, her hand resting on the arm of a man whose suit screamed custom-tailored wealth. Liam reappeared at my side, his face flushed with a mixture of heat and hope. Arthur just introduced me to a potential client. He said I'm one of his most promising junior architects. His eyes shone. This was it. The big break. The reason we'd scraped together every penny for my ticket, for this dress, for the valet parking that made my stomach clench. That's amazing, Liam, I said, meaning it, pushing my own discomfort down. His joy was my joy. His dreams were our dreams. Come on, he said, taking my hand. He wants me to bring you over. Cynthia insisted. A cold dread trickled down my spine. Do we have to? Iris, please. For me. Just be you. He said it like it was a simple request. He didn't understand that me, in this context, was a liability. We weaved through the crowd. The air grew thicker, smelling of expensive perfume and ambition. Cassandra's eyes flicked over me as we approached, a faint, condescending smile playing on her lips. It was the same look she'd given me when I'd tripped in the cafeteria, spilling my tray of subsidized meatloaf. Liam. And you must be Iris, Arthur boomed, his voice dripping with a false warmth. Liam's told us so little about you. Keeping the mystery alive, eh? Cynthia's gaze was a physical weight, assessing, dismissing. What a classic dress, she said, the pause speaking volumes. Thank you, I murmured, my voice sounding small and reedy. So, Iris, Cassandra drawled, sipping her champagne. What is it you do? Liam's always so vague. Are you in the arts? A struggling painter, perhaps. She made it sound like a contagious disease. Liam jumped in, ever my defender. Iris is incredibly talented. She's a writer. She's actually working on a writer. Cassandra interrupted, her laugh like shattering glass. How bohemian. Blogging, is it? Or those little influencer posts? I felt my cheeks burn. I'm working on a novel, I said, the words feeling foolish and pretentious the moment they left my mouth. A collective, subtle smirk passed between the Kingsleys. Arthur clapped Liam on the shoulder. A novel. Well, we all have our hobbies, don't we? Liam, my boy, you'll need to be the serious breadwinner, I see. He laughed, and the sycophants around him laughed with him. The conversation moved on, swirling around me, excluding me. I was a statue, a piece of furniture. They talked about investments, about a recent trip to St. Moritz, about the absurdity of the help these days. I stood there, a ghost at their feast, my hand slowly going numb in Liam's. Then it happened. A server, a young man with tired eyes, was circulating with a tray of canapés. As he passed our group, Cynthia turned abruptly, her elbow catching the edge of the tray. A vol au vent, filled with a lurid pink mousse, launched into the air as if in slow motion. It landed squarely on the bodice of my simple black dress. The shock of the impact was cold and wet. A grotesque smear of salmon and cream cheese bloomed over my heart. A beat of silence. Then, Cynthia's hand flew to her mouth, not in apology, but in theatrical dismay. "Oh, you clumsy girl," she hissed, not at the server but at me. The server stammered an apology, his face pale, but Arthur cut him off. "Watch what you're doing, man. You've ruined the lady's dress." The pause before dress was the final, precise cut. But it was Cassandra who delivered the coup de grace. She leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper meant to be heard by everyone in our immediate circle. "Oh, Iris. Don't worry. It's not like it was anything valuable. The dam broke." Laughter, sharp and cruel, erupted from them. Not a loud, boisterous laugh, but a series of titters and sniggers, a shared joke at the absolute absurdity of me, a nobody, thinking I could stand among them. I saw the look in their eyes, not just amusement, but a genuine belief in my insignificance. The stain on my dress was just an outward manifestation of what they saw on my soul. Liam stood frozen. I saw the conflict in his eyes, the urge to defend me warring with the terror of jeopardizing everything he'd worked for. The terror won. He looked at me, then at his laughing boss, and he gave a weak, forced chuckle. It was the smallest sound, but it shattered me more completely than Cassandra's malice ever could. Tears, hot and humiliating, welled in my eyes. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I turned and fled, pushing through the crowd of staring, pitying, smirking faces, the stain on my dress feeling like a brand. The symphony of the gala had become a roaring cacophony in my ears, and all I could hear was the echo of their laughter, and the sound of my own heart breaking. I didn't stop until I was outside, the cold night air slapping my burning face. I hailed a cab, my body shaking with sobs I couldn't contain. As the car pulled away from the glittering hotel, I made a promise to myself, to the universe, to the ghost of the girl I used to be. They thought I was a nobody. They thought my value was defined by the price tag on my dress. I would make them see. I would come back. And I would make them eat every single, laughing word. The days that followed the gala were painted in shades of gray. Liam tried to apologize, his words tumbling over each other in a river of excuses. I was shocked, Iris. My career was on the line. They're just like that, you can't take it personally. But that was the thing. I did take it personally. His silence in that moment was a personal betrayal. The man I loved, the man who shared my dreams, had chosen the approval of monsters over defending the woman he claimed to cherish. The foundation of our relationship, which I had believed was built on solid rock, was revealed to be sand, washed away by one weak chuckle. I moved out of our small apartment 2 weeks later. The silence between us was heavier than any argument. There was nothing left to say. He had shown me who he was, and I, finally, had believed him. I rented a microscopic studio that smelled of stale coffee and despair. I quit my part-time job at the bookstore. The pitying looks from my coworkers were too much to bear. My novel, the one I'd been so passionate about, sat on my laptop, its digital pages blank. How could I create worlds of hope and justice when my own felt so bleak and unfair? I was adrift. The humiliation was a constant companion, replaying in my mind every night, the feel of the cold mousse, the sound of their laughter, the look on Liam's face. I was a ghost, haunting my own life. And then, the letter came. It was thick, creamy parchment, addressed in an elegant, spidery script I didn't recognize. The return address was a law firm in Boston. Frost, Bernstein and Crowe. It sounded important. My first thought was that I was being sued for something. It felt like the kind of year-where that would happen. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Dear Ms. Iris Thorne. We regret to inform you of the passing of your great-aunt, Beatrice Crowe, on the 17th of this month. I stopped reading. Aunt B. My grandfather's sister. A formidable, sharp-tongued woman I'd met only a handful of times in my childhood. She'd been a presence, a whirlwind of silk scarves and strong opinions who'd lived in a big, old house in Beacon Hill, and had little patience for children. We'd sent her a Christmas card every year, a tenuous thread of connection. I hadn't even known she was ill. My eyes scanned down the page, the legal jargon swimming before me. And then, a phrase leaped out, clear and impossible. Primary beneficiary of her entire estate. I read it again. And again. I read about holdings. About investments. About a venture capital fund. About a private equity firm. About a literal treasure trove of antique jewelry and art. The numbers mentioned made no sense. They were telephone numbers, country codes, abstractions. I sat down on the floor of my shabby studio, the expensive parchment crinkling in my tight grip. This had to be a mistake. A cruel joke. But it wasn't. Aunt B, the intimidating old woman, had been Beatrice Crowe. Of Frost, Bernstein and Crowe. She hadn't just married into money. She had been the money. A self-made titan of industry who had chosen to live a quiet, intensely private life. And for reasons known only to her, perhaps my yearly Christmas cards, perhaps a shared sense of being an outsider, perhaps just to spite the more distant relatives she despised, she had left it all to me. Me. Iris Thorne. The girl with the stained dress. The first thing I felt wasn't joy. It was a profound, universe-altering sense of whiplash. The world had just been flipped on its axis. I met with the lawyers, a trio of severe-looking men in a boardroom that smelled of lemon polish and old money. They confirmed it all. It was real. The bank statements, the property deeds, the stock portfolios, they were all laid before me. I was, for all intents and purposes, richer than I could possibly comprehend. I walked out of that skyscraper onto the streets of Boston, a different person. The sun felt different. The air tasted different. I was still me, Iris, but I was now also the keeper of a colossal secret. The payback fantasy, once a bitter daydream, now solidified into a concrete plan. It wasn't just about money. Throwing cash in their faces would be crude, and ultimately, they'd find a way to dismiss it. Nouveau riche, they'd sneer. Lucky break. No. I needed to beat them at their own game. I needed to become one of them but better. I needed to be untouchable. I hired a team. A discreet financial advisor, a fierce personal stylist, a voice coach to sand away the hesitant edges of my speech. I sold the antique jewelry, all except for one piece, a stunning, intricate Art Deco diamond necklace that had been Aunt Bea's favorite. I poured the capital into my new venture, the one I'd conceived in the ashes of my old life. I became a ghost in the world of high finance. Using intermediaries and shell companies, I began to quietly acquire a significant stake in Kingsley Holdings, Arthur's precious real estate development firm. I learned everything about them, their projects, their investors, their weaknesses. I saw the arrogant overreach in their plans, the corners they cut, the debts they hid. A year passed. The raw pain had been forged into a cold, hard blade of purpose. I learned to walk in heels that cost more than my old rent. I learned to wear clothes that were armor. I learned the language of power, and how to speak it fluently. I looked in the mirror one morning, on the eve of the annual Kingsley Children's Hospital Gala, the same event where my life had been torn apart. The woman staring back was a stranger. Her hair was sleek, her makeup impeccable. She wore a look of cool, unassailable confidence. The hurt was still there, deep in her eyes, but it was now buried under layers of diamond-hard resolve. She was ready. The invitation had arrived at my new penthouse, addressed to Ms. Iris Thorne. No +1. They probably assumed I was still alone. They were right, but not in the way they thought. I picked up the velvet box on my dresser and opened it. The Art Deco necklace glittered with a cold, ancient fire. I fastened it around my neck. It felt heavy. Right. Tonight, the nobody would make her return. And the stage was set for their humiliation to be complete. The drive to the gala was a study in surreal contrast. Last time, a rattling cab, my hands clenched in my lap, my stomach a knot of anxiety. This time, a silent, sleek town car, my posture relaxed against the buttersoft leather, a serene calm settling over me. I was not anxious. I was focused. I wore crimson. A floor-length gown the color of fresh blood, of warning, of power. It was sculpted to my body, elegant and devastatingly simple, letting the fabric and the cut speak for itself. My hair was swept up, allowing the dazzling spectacle of Aunt Bea's diamond necklace to rest against my skin, its facets catching the light, and throwing rainbows across the car's interior. I was no longer trying to blend in. I was a statement. The car pulled up to the same hotel. The same red carpet. The same flash of cameras. But this time, they weren't ignoring me. The photographer's eyes, trained to spot money and importance, snapped in my direction. "Who is that?" I heard one murmur. The flashes popped, a staccato burst of light. I offered a small, enigmatic smile and glided inside. The symphony was the same. The clink of glass, the rustle of fabric, the murmur of wealth. But this time, I was not an off-key instrument. I was the conductor. Heads turned as I entered the ballroom. I felt the gaze of the room like a physical touch, curious, appreciative, speculative. I accepted a flute of champagne from a passing tray without looking, my eyes already scanning the crowd for my prey. I found them. The Kingsleys, in almost the exact same spot. Their backs were to me. Liam was with them, looking handsome and strained, laughing a little too loudly at something Arthur was saying. I began my approach, moving through the crowd with a slow, deliberate grace. A path seemed to clear for me. I saw the moment Cynthia noticed me. Her eyes, which had been glazed with boredom, sharpened. They flicked over my dress, my posture, my jewels, calculating, assessing. I saw the confusion first. Then the dawning, horrifying recognition. Her jaw went slack. She subtly elbowed Arthur, who turned, his jovial expression faltering. Cassandra followed their gaze. The smile on her perfectly glossed lips froze, then melted away, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated shock. Her eyes widened as they traveled from my face to the diamonds at my throat. She knew jewelry. She knew what that necklace meant. Liam turned last. And his reaction was the one that truly fed my soul. His face went pale. His eyes, those familiar, kind eyes, were wide with disbelief, then confusion, then a slow, dawning horror. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. In a way, he had. I stopped before them, letting the silence stretch, holding them all in my calm, unnerving gaze. "Arthur." "Cynthia," I said, my voice low, clear, and utterly changed. It held no trace of its old hesitancy. It was a voice used to being listened to. "Cassandra." It's been a while. Arthur recovered first, his businessman's instincts kicking in. Iris. My dear girl, what a surprising transformation. You look, well. He was floundering, his eyes constantly darting to my necklace. Thank you, Arthur, I said smoothly. I've had a rather fortunate year. That necklace, Cassandra blurted out, her voice strangled. It's a crow piece. The Art Deco system. It was auctioned at Sotheby's for, she couldn't bring herself to say the number. It was legendary. I touched a diamond lightly. A family heirloom. I'm surprised you recognize it. It's been out of the public eye for decades. The implication hung in the air, my family has had heirlooms like this for decades. What does yours have? Cynthia found her voice, though it was shrill. What are you doing here? It was breathtakingly rude, a testament to her utter bewilderment. I offered a thin, cold smile. Why, the same as you, Cynthia. Supporting the children's hospital. It's such a worthy cause, don't you think? One must give back. I let my eyes drift meaningfully to the small, discreet stain on the cuff of Arthur's tuxedo shirt. His face flushed. The awkward silence was broken by the approach of Maxwell Crowe, the senior partner of the law firm, and my appointed guardian in this new world. He was in his 70s, with the authority of a Roman emperor. Iris, my dear, he said, taking my hand and kissing it with old-world charm. He completely ignored the Kingsleys. You're radiant. Beatrice would be so proud to see you wearing her favorite piece. It suits you far more than it ever did her. The Kingsleys looked like they'd been struck by lightning. Maxwell Crowe knew me. He was kissing my hand. He was speaking of a level of wealth and lineage they could only aspire to. Thank you, Max, I said, as if we had tea together every Tuesday. I was just catching up with the Kingsleys. Arthur here was Liam's boss. I turned my gaze to Liam, who looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Hello, Liam. Iris, he choked out. You look different. I supplied helpfully. Yes. Life has a funny way of changing things, doesn't it? I held his gaze until he looked away, shamed. I turned back to the group. Well, it was memorable seeing you all again. Do enjoy your evening. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving them in a stunned, silent circle of devastation. The first act was over. The unveiling was complete. They were reeling, confused, and deeply, deeply humiliated. And they had no idea that the real performance was just about to begin. The gala proceeded, but the energy in the room had shifted. I was the new gravity well. People I'd never met approached me, introduced by a discreet word from Maxwell Crowe. Venture capitalists, gallery owners, society matrons. They all wanted to know the mysterious woman in the crimson dress with the Crowe diamonds. I played my part perfectly. I was charming, witty, and just enigmatic enough. I spoke of my new venture, a philanthropic investment fund focused on supporting the arts and innovative medical research. I named it the Systrom Foundation, after my necklace. Every time I said it, I saw Cassandra flinch from across the room. I watched the Kingsleys from my periphery. They were huddled together, speaking in frantic, hushed tones. Their perfect evening was ruined. Their social standing, which depended on being the apex predators in this particular jungle, was suddenly under threat from an unknown entity. Me. The highlight of the evening was the pledge drive. A charismatic auctioneer took the stage to solicit donations for the hospital's new wing. It was a brutal, public display of wealth and status, where social capital was won and lost with the wave of a paddle. The donations started rolling in. 5,000. 10. 20. The Kingsleys, as they did every year, waited for the perfect moment to make their show-stopping donation. It was their tradition, their way of cementing their status as the event's top benefactors. Arthur finally stood, puffing out his chest, and held up his paddle. The Kingsley family pledges $250,000, he announced, his voice booming with false modesty. A wave of appreciative applause rippled through the room. He smiled, basking in the glow. Cynthia and Cassandra preened. The auctioneer beamed. An incredibly generous pledge from the Kingsley family. Thank you, Arthur. Do we have 260? Can anyone beat 250? The room was quiet. This was the Kingsleys' moment. It was expected. I waited a bit. Let them have their second of triumph. Let them think they'd won back the night. Then, I slowly, elegantly, raised my own paddle. It was a simple, numbered card, but at that moment it felt like Excalibur. The auctioneer's eyes found me. I have a bid. Number 117. Do I hear 260? I didn't speak. I simply shook my head, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Confusion flickered on the auctioneer's face. No? You're declining. I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't understand. The entire ballroom was silent, watching me. The Kingsleys were staring, their smiles frozen on their faces. I stood up. The crimson dress seemed to drink the light in the room. I picked up the microphone that had been placed on my table for such occasions. My voice, amplified, was calm and clear, echoing in the rapt silence. I do not wish to beat the Kingsley family's generous donation, I said, turning to look directly at them. Their faces were masks of confusion. I simply wish to add to it. I paused, letting the anticipation build. The Sistrum Foundation, I announced, will match the Kingsley family's donation. Dollar for dollar. A murmur went through the crowd. Matching $250,000 was impressive. A power move. Arthur's shoulders relaxed slightly. It was still a shared spotlight, but he could live with that. I wasn't finished. And I continued, the word slicing through the murmur, as a personal tribute to the incredible work this hospital does. I will donate an additional $5 million. Not to the general fund. I turned my gaze back to the stage, to the stunned hospital board members. But to establish the Iris Thorne Ward for Pediatric Oncology. In perpetuity. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the velvet carpet. Then, the room exploded. The applause was thunderous, deafening. People rose to their feet. Cameras flashed like a lightning storm. I was surrounded by a roar of approval and shock. I looked back at the Kingsleys. Their triumph had been annihilated. Utterly. Completely. A matching donation had been reduced to a footnote, a mere catalyst for my own breathtaking generosity. Their name would be a line on a program. Mine would be etched in stone on a building wing. Forever. Arthur's face was purple with a mixture of rage and humiliation. Cynthia looked like she'd been slapped. Cassandra was staring at me with pure, undiluted hatred. And Liam. Oh, Liam. He was just broken. He was staring at me not with anger but with a profound, gut-wrenching regret. He saw everything he had lost. Not just the money but the strength, the grace, the power. The woman who had stood by him, whom he had failed to stand by, was now a queen, and he was just a subject in a crowd, watching her claim her throne. I had not just beaten them. I had erased them. I had taken their moment of greatest social pride and made it my own. I had redefined the very scale of generosity in the room, and in doing so, I had exposed their donation for what it was, not true charity, but a transactional purchase of status. A status I had just bought infinitely more of. The auctioneer was babbling thanks, the hospital director was rushing towards me with tears in his eyes. I accepted their gratitude with a gentle smile, but my work was done. Checkmate. In the aftermath of the explosion, there is always a silence. The gala ended in a blur of handshakes, tearful thanks from hospital administrators, and the stunned, reverent stares of the crowd. I was the undisputed victor, the heroine of the evening. I gave a few polite, brief interviews, deflecting questions about my sudden wealth with a practiced, "It's a private family matter. Tonight is about the children." It only added to my mystique. I didn't look for the Kingsleys again. I didn't need to. The image of their devastated faces was burned into my memory, a satisfying trophy. I saw them leaving early, Arthur practically dragging a shell-shocked Cynthia, and a furious Cassandra through a side exit, avoiding the press. They couldn't escape fast enough. Liam was gone too. I wasn't sure when he'd left. A part of me, the old, tender part, felt a pang of something like sorrow for him. But it was small, and it was quiet. He had made his choice a year ago on a night much like this one. My town car was waiting. As I slid into the quiet, plush interior, the adrenaline began to fade, leaving a strange, hollow emptiness in its wake. The music of revenge had been loud and glorious, but now the song was over and the echo was complicated. I arrived back at my penthouse, the silent, spacious rooms feeling vast and empty. I stood on the balcony, looking out at the glittering skyline of the city. I had done it. I had humiliated them as they had humiliated me. I had won. So why didn't it feel like I thought it would? I thought the payoff would be a hot, burning satisfaction. Instead, it was a cool, quiet calm. The screaming pain of that night was gone. The humiliation was washed away, not by their tears, but by my own act of colossal, life-changing power. I hadn't just paid them back, I had moved so far beyond them that their opinion, their laughter, their world, no longer had any hold on me. The revenge wasn't in their humiliation. It was in my own liberation. I took off the diamond necklace, its weight suddenly feeling heavy, symbolic of the burden I'd been carrying. I placed it back in its velvet box, not as a symbol of my payback, but as a beautiful heirloom from a fierce woman I wished I'd known better. The next morning, the society pages were predictably ablaze. Mystery philanthropist stuns gala. Who is Iris Thorne? There were photos of me in the crimson dress, of the Kingsleys looking stunned, side-by-side comparisons of then and now from the previous year's gala, a grainy shot of me fleeing with a stain on my dress next to a glorious shot of me at the microphone. The narrative was set. I was Cinderella, but I had fitted the glass slipper on myself. A week later, a letter arrived. It was on Kingsley Holdings stationery. Arthur's shaky signature was at the bottom. It was full of groveling apologies, of regrettable misunderstandings, of hopes for a fruitful future relationship. He was scared. My significant, silent stake in his company was a sword of Damocles over his head, and he knew it. I dropped the letter in the recycling bin without a second thought. There was another letter, too. On simple, plain paper. In a handwriting I knew so well. Iris. I don't expect you to read this. I don't deserve for you to. I just need to say it. What I did that night was the biggest mistake of my life. I was weak. I was scared. I was ambitious in all the wrong ways. I chose a path I thought would lead to success, and in doing so, I lost the only thing that truly mattered. Seeing you there, it was like seeing the sun for the first time. You were magnificent. You were everything I ever loved about you, multiplied by 1,000, your strength, your grace, your heart. You didn't just buy a wing, you showed everyone what real strength looks like. It doesn't come from a firm's letterhead. It comes from character. I am so sorry. I am so deeply, unbearably sorry for not laughing with you, for not defending you, for not choosing you. I will regret it every day for the rest of my life. I quit my job at Kingsley. I can't work for a man like that. I'm starting over on my own. It's terrifying. But it's honest. I am happy for you, Iris. Truly. You deserve every good thing in the world. Liam. I held the letter for a long time. The words didn't rekindle any old flames. That fire was out, its ashes cold. But they did provide a kind of closure. He saw me now. Truly saw me. And he recognized his failure. That was a payoff I hadn't even anticipated. I folded the letter and put it away in a drawer, not as a keepsake of a lost love but as a receipt. Proof of a debt finally paid in full. Months later, the Systrom Foundation was fully operational. I was in my new office, reviewing grant proposals for a community art center, when my assistant brought in the morning mail. Among the business envelopes was a small, handmade card. On the front was a child's drawing, a bright, sunny room, a stick figure in a bed, and a smiling figure in a doctor's coat. Inside, in a child's scrawl, it read, "Thank you for my new room. It doesn't feel so scary in here. Love, Sophie, age 7. A nurse had helped her write it. She was one of the first patients in the Iris Thorne ward. I touched the crayon drawing, the simple, heartfelt words. And there in the quiet of my sun-drenched office, surrounded by the real, tangible good that my wealth could do, I finally found it. The emotion I'd been searching for. It wasn't the hot satisfaction of revenge. It was a deep, profound, and overwhelming peace. They had humiliated me for being a nobody. But in their cruelty, they had unknowingly given me the key to becoming my true somebody. My wealthy return hadn't just shocked them. It had freed me. And as I looked at Sophie's card, I knew with absolute certainty that my story was no longer about them. It was only about where I went from here. The echo of their laughter had finally, completely faded away, replaced by the far more beautiful sound of a child's gratitude. And that was a payoff worth more than any diamond. Thank you for watching. Share your thoughts about my story in the comment section.